Hey everyone, it's Tyler and welcome back to the St. Saviour's Virtual Youth Group. Today's topic, leadership. Thanks so much for checking out the St. Saviour's Virtual Youth Group. If you haven't already, click the subscribe button and hit that bell icon so that you get notifications every time we post a video. Okay, here we go, leadership. Today we're going to define leadership, talk about the difference between a boss and a leader, and we even have a special guest who's going to share their opinion on what it means to be an effective leader. When you look up the definition for effective leadership, here's what it says. An effective leader creates an inspiring vision of the future. They motivate and inspire people to engage with that vision. They manage delivery of the vision, and they coach and build a team so that it is more effective at achieving that vision. Leadership brings together the skills needed to do these things. Okay, let's get started. What does it mean to be a good leader? Well, in my opinion, a good leader is someone who is motivated, passionate, and a good listener. They take into account the ideas and thoughts of everyone on their team before making a decision. An effective leader also always leads by example. They're the first one in the mix, and they're the first one to show you how to do a task instead of just telling you. The biggest difference between a boss and a leader is that a boss will tell you what to do and a leader will show you what to do. Leadership is about teamwork, working together, taking your skills and showing the people that you work with how to do a task, how to accomplish something, and working alongside them. A boss demands your attention. A boss tells you what to do without showing you. A boss expects you to figure out how to do a task without ever learning. Hey everyone, we've got Shelley Fletcher here, and she is the Executive Director of People First of Canada, and she's going to talk to us about leadership, what it means to be a leader, how to be an effective leader, and so first off, Shelley, why don't you tell us a little bit about People First of Canada and what you do?
Okay, so People First of Canada is a national organization. It is a organization that's focused on people who have intellectual disabilities and their rights. We're in every province and territory across Canada right now. Currently, we do not have an active chapter in Nunavut. Other than that, we have active chapters across the country. Our organization is run by a board of directors, whom are my bosses. And our board of directors is comprised of about 20 people. We have representation from every province and territory, and then we have a couple of positions that are appointed positions on our board. We have an Aboriginal rep on our board. We have a Francophone outside of Quebec rep on our board. We have a youth. We're just starting our youth, getting more involved with youth, and so we will have an appointed youth representative on our board. And all of those people I just mentioned, every single one of them has an intellectual disability.
Wow.
So yeah, and that we are unique in Canada, and that we are the only board in Canada that's comprised solely of what we would call lived experience, people with lived experience. So most boards you'll see might have one or two people on their board who represent the disability that the board is working for. But at People First of Canada, if you do not have the label of an intellectual disability, you cannot be on our board of directors.
So I think when it comes to leadership, obviously being an executive director, you are in a very high position of leadership. But in your day-to-day, what sort of leadership tasks and responsibilities kind of come up?
I work closely with our executive committee. So we have a president and a first vice president, and a treasurer and a secretary position. And our past president also sits on the executive. I work really closely in my day-to-day work with them. Mm-hmm. And so back to your question, what is your day-to-day work? So what we do is, first of all, I want to tell you that we are funded solely through the federal government. So we work for the office, it's called the Office for Disability Issues, mm-hmm. with the federal government. They give us money, and our sort of our mission is to teach community, to teach society how to be inclusive and to include people with intellectual disabilities. And we also teach people with intellectual disabilities that they have the right to be included. Our work is guided really closely by the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. We call it the UNCRPD. And that's our guiding principle. Those are our guiding articles that we follow in the work that we do. So the federal government gives us money, and we do projects all over the country, raising awareness and teaching. We're very much an education and advocacy organization. In our world, people with disabilities as a whole are the left behind in society. And people with intellectual disabilities are the left behind of the left behind. We are the bottom of the totem pole when it comes to being included, being respected. And, we work really hard to ensure that our voice is at the table. When decisions are being made about people with intellectual disabilities, you have to have people with intellectual disabilities at the table. They're the experts. Right?
Yeah. In your opinion, in your experience with your job, and even just in your life, like what makes a good leader, like an effective leader?
I think that probably the best lessons that I've learned in a leadership role, I've learned from working under other leaders who were not good leaders.
Yeah.
And I can remember being really young, working in a couple of different workplaces, and I had some pretty awful bosses. And as I slowly became moving up the ranks in my career and went from, being just an employee to maybe taking on a supervisory role, I honestly think the best lessons I learned came from those negative experiences that I had in my life. I'm now the executive director of a national organization. We have a very small core group of staff, but we run predominantly on volunteers. We have lots of volunteers involved in our organization. And I think I'm an effective leader. I do. I think that I can say that based on my staff, my retention, how long people stay with us.
Yeah.
And I really am two things. I really treat my staff and body like we're all very equal. I I don't have to be the boss at work because we each have different jobs and they do their jobs better than I could do their job. And so I really respect the work that they do.
Yeah, well, I think that that is just a good example of, you know, as the leader at the organization, as the executive director, it's not just about you. It's not about you making the final decision alone. It's not about you, you know, telling everybody what to do. It's not about making executive orders without consulting. It is about working together as a team. And I think that you would agree that that is what makes an effective leader, right? Is that joint effort of everybody coming together and like you said, working closely with your president, working closely with your finance and your other teams on the ground, and coming to those conclusions. And I think it's going to be more level-headed that way too.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. You know, when you have somebody who has the title, it's a title, right? And it's pretty. It looks good on a business card. It looks good on a resume.
Right.
But when you have people who have that power behind the title, that is, for me, in my career, those have never worked for me. Where I become the leader is when I'm liaising with the federal government. That's my role with the organization. Is I do all of the work with at the federal end of things, and there's a lot of work when you work for the federal government. The other thing is that I think has made me a good leader is I've been with People First for 19 years. And it's an interesting learning curve to work for people who have intellectual disabilities, not work with them, but I work for them. They are literally my boss. I have seen them let people go over the years. And so one of the things that's very challenging and worries me for the organization is if they had a leader who took control of that, their voice would not be what people are listening to. They would be listening to my voice.
Well, yeah, and it's your job to advocate on their behalf. And, you know, if there's somebody who is forgetting that and who's forgetting, you know, who you're working for, exactly like you said, not who you're working, working with, but who you're working for. That if you forget that.
And it happens all the time. I get emails all the time. Hey, Shelley, we want you to be involved. We want you to be involved on this committee. And my response is, oh, I'm sorry, I don't sit on committees. Our board members sit on committees, and I'm happy to assist them. But I am not allowed to represent this organization because I don't have an intellectual disability. And so that's very challenging. And I think that the success I've had at People First is I have never forgotten that. And I have twice in my career with People First, I have gotten permission from my president to speak on behalf of the organization. That isn't something I do. It's not, and it's something I'm conscious of. I never forget that. But there's been sometimes in the press when things are happening right now, something will come up in the press. They'll phone me and they'll be like, "We need to talk to you right now. Hang on, let me talk to my president." I'll phone him. Do I have permission? He'll say, "No, I'll do it. Do it with me." Okay, I'll call them back and go, "No, my president's going to speak, but I'll assist." It's very rare that I will speak on behalf of the organization, and I think that has developed me into a good leader in all aspects of leadership, not just working with my board, whether it's working with the federal government or working with my staff. I totally respect their opinions in their lines of work. They're much more educated and smarter than I am. We have a director of communications. She's brilliant. I wouldn't dream of drafting a letter and sending it off without her approval on it because I don't know how to do it, right? So I think that's part of what I think a good leader is. I think, can anybody be a leader? Probably. Does everybody want to be a leader? No. And do we have some bad leaders? Yeah.
Yes, we do, yeah.
Sure do. And I think that leadership is something that I think anybody could do it, but could they do it effectively and properly? you
Yeah, I
know?
think you're right. It's about understanding the strengths of everybody on your team, and not knowing, and knowing that you're not always right, that you're not always going to be, have the correct answer, and that you have to collaborate, right, with everybody else in your team, and use those skills and use their strengths that they have, right? Because you have a strength, and maybe one of those strengths is being a leader, but you have to use the skills and strengths of everyone else on your team as well.
Yeah,
Big decisions and in
exactly.
projects and things like that.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so, yes,
Yeah.
there are bad leaders. That is a fact. And like you said, that's often where we find the good qualities in a leader, in how to be a leader, is by, what not to do, right? By seeing examples of bad leadership, we know, okay, I don't want to be that kind of leader. That's not effective. That didn't work when I was under that person, and if I'm ever in a position of leadership, I would do that differently.
Exactly.
That's a huge part of it.
It is. And I have, over the course of my career, I've had positions where I've supervised quite a few staff, right? Now I have a small staff body, but, my job before People First, I had, 100 and something staff underneath me. And I'll never forget being a young girl coming into this field and working for a boss, and how I would go home from work some days and how I felt. And I vowed as soon as I started moving into supervisory roles that I didn't want anybody to feel like that under my leadership.
Mm-hmm.
I was treated so poorly, and I really believe that the work I was doing was more important than the work she was doing. And the fact that she would just squash us little frontline workers and treat us so poorly. And I just took that so to heart. And I really think, not everybody likes me. And, when you have a staff of over 100 people, you certainly deal with some staffing issues. But I am, if nothing else, I'm a fair employer. And I probably to a fault, probably too much, where over the years I probably tolerated more than I should have as a leader, because I just believe in the good of people and I wanted that to come out, so I do.
From those, right? You learn from those experiences and those moments.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think that's another part about leadership, right? Is like learning and growing, and like things happen, and they don't always go the way you thought they would go, and then you have to adapt and maybe take a different approach. And like you said, you've been with them for 19 years. How long have you been in the executive director position that whole time? Right.
Yeah.
And so on day one, I'm sure like you've evolved as a leader since then. Leaps and bounds. But obviously at that time, they obviously still thought you were a good leader and would make a good leader, but there's always room to grow in leadership. Right? And I like what you said about it's just a title, right? Like you said, if it's on a resume and it says you were an executive director for 20 years, it looks great. It sounds impressive. But until you get on the phone and talk to somebody that you worked with, or somebody that, was one of your employees, and that's going to be way more important going into a new job. Just because you were the executive director doesn't mean you were a good leader. It doesn't mean you were fair, respectful, and good to work with, right? So you have to talk to the other people.
Yeah.
Why is good leadership important for an organization? Why is it going to help that organization move forward?
I think good leadership. Okay, so first of all, if you don't have a good leader running your organization, that can affect things like the reputation of your organization. It can affect the, I know there's organizations that I will not work with based on the leadership, right? If they don't, because I've worked with them before and it's been a very unpleasant experience, I'm not going to do it again.
Right.
And so I think that as the leader, there is a sense of responsibility. You're representing the organization. I always say that, but the truth is the person who answers the phone is, it's often our admin folk who say, good afternoon. They are the first intro to the organization. But as a leader, I know that I am representing people first all the time. And I, even off work hours, I'm still representing this organization and the values and the beliefs that we have. If you have a leader who is not well respected I think I just said it, like, people don't want to work with you, right? Tyler, I'm the kind of person who, and you know me well, we've known each other your whole life. I'm the kind of person who I don't know how to put on airs. So if I'm hanging in your living room with your family, or if I'm representing in front of the minister in Ottawa, which I do all the time. So you can dress me up and I can put on a suit and some high heels and I can click down the hallways at Parliament Hill, and I can, have to go through security checks, and I can get in that office in front of the minister, but I don't know how to be anything but this. So I'm often tripping over my feet, and I cry. I'm so passionate about the work that I do that when I'm talking about an issue that is so hurtful to me, I will literally sit in front of a minister and cry. I don't know how to not be anything but this. And I think that has been in my favor because, no matter what level of hierarchy I'm working with, I only know how to be this. So I can't even pretend to be this professional executive director. I only know I can look like one, comb my hair and, put on a little makeup. But when I get there and I sit down, I only know how to do this. And that can be a detriment as a leader because you have to sometimes be professional. Mm-hmm. And, I can pull off enough that I'm respected, but at the end of the day, I think I'm more respected as a leader because I'm very real in who I am.
You can't, I think as a leader and an executive director or in a position like that, you can't ever think too highly of yourself. You can't ever think of yourself as above or before. Like you said, it's you're working with people, you're working for people in so many instances. And you can't put yourself on this pedestal because exactly, it's going to hurt your reputation, it's going to hurt your relationships, and it's just, like you said, not effective.
No.
Do you know an effective leader in your life? Take a minute and think about it. What are some qualities that you think are important to being a good leader? Take a minute and put a few qualities down in the comment section below. Powerful versus powerless. One of the most important things about being a leader is how you make the people you're leading feel. Think of a time in your life when you felt powerful, and think of a time when you felt powerless as the result of what someone said or did. How did it affect you? Well, that's pretty much it for today. Before we go, I want to remind you to check out the additional resources that I will attach in the description box below. That'll include videos, reading material, and other resources for you to learn more about leadership after. Also, if you haven't already, subscribe to our channel, hit the bell icon so that you get notifications every time we post, and we'll see you next Sunday.